In this episode of The Frieze, we'll talk about the collective bargaining agreement and revisit the 1994 strike-shortened season and the 1994 Yankees and envision the 1994 World Series matchup that could have been if not for the strike. We'll also talk about which Yankees are free agents and in which areas the Yankees need to improve this winter and, in general, who could be available. And finally, we'll revisit some crazy offseason moves of the past, see how they worked out, and envision a crazy offseason move or two for 2022. I'm Derek, this is The Frieze, stick around. This could be a very slow or a very fast winter when it comes to baseball transactions. But the smart money is on it being an extremely slow winter because no one even knows what the league is going to look like next year, what the luxury tax threshold will be. Will the National League have a DH? What's the draft pick compensation for signing a free agent? All of these questions are going to be answered via negotiations later this winter, although the Tigers and Reds, they're off to a fast start. Tucker Barnhart was already traded to the Tigers. Interesting how quickly that went down. That's right, everybody's favorite sports topic. How teams and players can best spend our hard-earned money. It's time for another round of collective bargaining. Major League Baseball and the Players Union have yet to sign a new collective bargaining agreement. And for those of you who are too young to have experienced a labor stoppage in the past, or those of you who just don't pay attention to the business side of sports, a collective bargaining agreement, or CBA, is a written legal contract between an employer, in this case, Major League Baseball, and a union representing the employees, the Major League Baseball Players Association. In baseball, the agreement usually is the result of extensive negotiations, and sometimes that leads to a work stoppage. The topics in the CBA are wide-ranging, everything from player salaries, free agency rules, the number of players on a roster, service time, the Major League Baseball amateur draft, drug testing, travel schedules, playoff formats, spring training per diem. Even the actual rules of the game are on the board. Things like designated hitter in the National League. This year's negotiations might drag out a bit. You might remember the two sides had some trouble coming to an agreement before the 2020 abbreviated season. There was a lot of hostility between those two sides, and that might carry over to this winter. The current collective bargaining agreement is set to expire in early December, and the two sides are, according to most reports, pretty far apart. For those of you who have never experienced a strike or a lockout, it really sucks, and it really hurts the game. In 1994, the season ended on August 12th, and it ruined my summer. I was just 11 years old, and so my life revolved around baseball. Just as I was really starting to fall in love with the game, watching it every night, mimicking Danny Tartabull and Don Mattingly and Ken Griffey Jr. in the backyard, the season ended over money issues. I didn't understand it. A lot of young fans didn't understand it. I remember asking, isn't everybody already rich? And that's the mistake Major League Baseball and the Players Union made, not realizing that nearly every fan was asking themselves that same question. Bunch of millionaires and billionaires arguing and refusing to play a game over a debate on how to spend the fans' hard-earned money. And fans essentially turned their back on the game for a while. When the strike finally ended in 1995, attendance was down, way down. It wasn't until McGwire and Sosa in 1998, chasing and breaking the home run record, that you really felt like the game was back. 1998 was my favorite summer. The Yankees won 114 games, 125 if you include the postseason. Ripken ended his streak. It was just an historic, amazing season. And even as a 15-year-old kid, I could feel the enormity of what I had just watched. And because of the home run chase, baseball was all over SportsCenter. Baseball Tonight was at its peak with Harold Reynolds and Peter Gammons. Baseball was in commercials. It was on SNL. Baseball really was a much bigger part of the American consciousness and culture than it feels like it is right now. I saw something on Twitter the other day that SportsCenter had basically not acknowledged the World Series was going on at all for the first few games. It was a shame. It was also a shame that in 1994, the Yankees could have made it to the World Series. They had the best record in the American League at 70-43. Paul O'Neill was hitting .359 when the season ended. He got the batting title. Wade Boggs was hitting .342. Don Mattingly was picking everything at first base. Mike Stanley was having a big year behind the dish. Jimmy Key was in his second year with the Yankees and was 17-4 with a 3.27 ERA on August 12th when the season ended. He would have won 20. Rest of the rotation was a little bit thin. Bullpen was a little bit thin too. Steve Howe was the closer. He had a good year, but he's the only Yankee I can ever remember being unanimously booed at Yankee Stadium for his pregame introduction for a home playoff game. That was in 1995. However, that 94 team was fourth in the league in ERA. Even with the thin bullpen and rotation, they ranked second in runs at 670. They were going to be a problem in the playoffs. Most experts were predicting a Yankees versus Expos World Series. The Expos that season had a young Larry Walker in his prime, Moises Alou in his prime, great complementary players like Rondell White and Will Cordero. They had a 22-year-old Pedro Martinez who was filthy. He was still learning how to pitch, but he was filthy, talking 100 miles an hour with Bugs Bunny breaking pitches. He was 11-5 with a 3.42 ERA. Jeff Fassaro, John Wetland was on that team, their closer, before he became a Yankee. Everyone thinks of the Braves as the NL team from the 90s, but the Expos had caught and passed them, and they were first in ERA, had the best record in baseball. That would have been a fun World Series if it got a chance to happen, but because of greed, it did not happen. The next couple of collective bargaining agreements went pretty smoothly, according to most reports. The players and the teams had apparently learned their lessons over how damaging a work stoppage can be, but it's been long enough now that some of those memories may have faded, and hopefully we don't have a repeat of the past, because that would be devastating to the game. All right, now that the World Series is over, the Yankees have a number of unrestricted free agents. Anthony Rizzo, their first baseman that they traded for at the trade deadline, is an unrestricted free agent. He has said that he wants to come back to the Yankees, not publicly, but that's what he's telling friends. The Yankees reportedly want him back as well. Brian Cashman said during his press conference that he loved having Anthony Rizzo on the team. He provides good defense. He's a left-handed hitter. It makes sense. Corey Kluber is also an unrestricted free agent. He had signed a one-year, $11 million contract. He had a solid season. He only made 16 starts because of a shoulder injury, but he was 5-3 with a 3.83 ERA, struck out 82 hitters in 80 innings. He is going to be 36 years old, and given all of the recent shoulder problems he's had, I would think the Yankees will be hesitant to spend big on bringing back Corey Kluber, though if he's willing to come back at a discount, then I think he could be back. He added a lot in terms of mentorship to the younger pitchers on the staff. He taught Mike King his curveball, and Mike King has since become an excellent pitcher, and I think Mike King's going to be a big factor for the Yankees next year, and you can partially credit that to the knowledge that he got from sitting next to Corey Kluber all season. Darren O'Day is also a free agent. Andrew Haney is a free agent. Don't think he'll be back. Brett Gardner could be a free agent. He's got a mutual option player and club option they both need to exercise. Otherwise, he becomes a free agent. Honestly, I think it's time for Gardy to hang him up and become a coach or an assistant coach, something like that. He's still got some skills left, but honestly, you don't want to pay millions of dollars for something you could probably get from a minor leaguer for 1/5 of that. All right, let's go over some major objectives for the upcoming season. The Yankees were 92-70 in 2021. That was good enough to reach the wild card game, but that's it. But as the 88-win Braves showed us, it's all about how you do in the postseason. Once again, power was a humongous factor in the postseason. Most of the runs were scored on home runs, and the team that hit the most home runs won the whole shebang. We know that the Yankees need more contact hitters, but they could actually use a bit more power as well. They had 222 home runs this season, but that was 17 less than the eventual world champion Braves. The Yankees were third in home runs in the American League, but did not have enough guys on base, so a lot of those home runs were solo shots. That's where the need for more contact comes in, and not just walks, because I know base runners are base runners, but hits can rattle a pitcher and move runners along, and that's important in the game of baseball. The Yankees were arguably at their best in August, when in addition to power bats like Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, they had guys that were athletic. They had the Greg Allens, and Tyler Wade was playing every day. Adding those elements of speed and athleticism did wonders for the Yankees. On the pitching side, the Yankees were 8th in the American League in home runs allowed, so bottom half of the league, but they did add Clay Holmes midway through the season. He throws a heavy sinker. They elevated their usage of Mike King, who throws a heavy sinker, so they're making an effort to get guys to put the ball on the ground a little bit more. They've got their entire staff throwing more changeups, which is traditionally a pitch that has some downward sinking action to it as well. So reading the tea leaves a little bit, these are the areas that I think the Yankees are going to want to focus on. Obviously, they're going to have to decide on Brett Gardner. That could happen sooner rather than later. Obviously, if they exercise their end of the option on Brett Gardner, he'll definitely exercise it on his end. It would open up some salary and a roster spot, though, if they choose not to. They need to decide on Corey Kluber and what pitching reinforcements they need. Jameson Taillon is having off-season ankle surgery. Actually, he already had the surgery, but he's going to be out till probably May. The Yankees might actually decide to bring Corey Kluber back, but if they decide Kluber isn't their guy, then I expect them to go after either Robbie Ray or Carlos Rodon or Kevin Gausman. Rodon and Gausman would be the two pitchers that I would target on my end. Robbie Ray is good, but he's a max effort guy, and I really don't want to listen to him grunt for 5 years. So for the sake of my ears, Carlos Rodon or Kevin Gausman. Gausman throws an awesome splitter, and he would be effective at keeping the ball in the ballpark, something that the Yankees are obviously trying to do more. In general, the pitching was solid this year. Pitching is always an area, though, where you try to upgrade. It doesn't matter what you have. You can never have enough pitching. So I think the Yankees are going to go after somebody. We'll see if they just decide to bring Kluber back. That may happen. The catching situation, obviously, Tucker Barnhart went off the market really quickly, so the Yankees need to be aggressive if they want to replace Gary Sanchez. But there's a chance that he could be back again simply just because of a lack of viable backup options. Personally, I think that catcher is an area where you need to prioritize defense over offense. But if the Yankees elect to let Gary Sanchez walk or to move him, then they're going to have to replace at least a little bit of that offense as well as getting a defensive catcher. The Yankees also need to get first base settled. I could be wrong, but as badly as we all want Matt Olson, I believe the Yankees are going to quickly re-sign Anthony Rizzo. And even if they don't, they still have both Voit and DJ LeMahieu on the roster. Or you could make a trade. But Rizzo, if he gets re-signed, allows some other dominoes to fall. You could move Luke Voit in a trade if you can find the right deal. You can figure out what exactly is the best way to deploy DJ LeMahieu. Do you want him playing every day at either third base or second base? Or do you want him rotating around the infield? Do you want him at first base? You got to figure out the shortstop situation. Right now, the Yankees do not have a shortstop. A lot of Yankees fans, myself included, are very interested in Corey Seager to a point. I don't want him for $300 million, but if he's willing to come for, let's say, 6 years, $150, sign me up. But if his price is too high, I'd rather the Yankees just went with Oswald Peraza. To be honest, I'd almost rather they went with Oswald Peraza anyway. It's fun to watch a young rookie get better and better and better. So the Yankees have a lot of different directions that they can go this winter. They're definitely going to try and get better on pitching. They need to solidify their defense, get more athletic, get more contact, and get a little bit more powerful at the plate. They've got a lot of heavy lifting to do, and let's not forget about replacing pretty much the entire coaching staff. And finally, just to end on a fun note, when Aaron Boone hit a home run to walk off the Red Sox in Game 7 of the 2003 ALCS, nobody on earth could have predicted that the starting third baseman for the Yankees in 2004 would be Alex Rodriguez. He was entering the fourth year of a 10-year, $252 million contract with the Texas Rangers. He had an ongoing feud with the shortstop for the Yankees, Derek Jeter. The Yankees had shortstop locked up already, and A-Rod wouldn't be expected to move to third for Derek Jeter, especially when A-Rod was a better shortstop than Jeter, let's be honest. But Aaron Boone tears up his knee, and the rest is history. A-Rod won 2 MVPs in the 4 seasons of that contract before he opted out. You could say what you want about the second Yankees contract, although it did lead to a World Series in 2009. But I feel like those 4 years of A-Rod under that initial contract was a good trade for the Yankees. In 2009, everyone expected CC Sabathia to go to the Yankees. The Yankees made him an offer shortly after midnight when he was eligible to talk to other teams. But not that many people expected A.J. Burnett to sign with the Yankees. Some people did. They suspected that the Yankees might try and get 2 starting pitchers, but once the Yankees added CC and AJ, it was highly unlikely they would hand out another big contract. Brian Cashman kept saying no, but then Mark Teixeira was a humongous surprise. Teixeira, of course, a huge part of that 2009 World Series team. He hit 39 home runs twice with the Yankees. He was a top 5 MVP candidate. He trailed off a little bit as that contract went on, which is par for the course with signing guys to 8-year contracts, but he had some injuries and he finished out strong. In 2017, the Yankees were supposed to be 1 year away from signing Bryce Harper or maybe Manny Machado, but Harper had grown up a Yankees fan and he said that he always wanted to put on the pinstripes, but instead, out of nowhere, Giancarlo Stanton, coming off of 59 home runs, becomes available, and the Yankees pull the trigger. His first year was really good. He carried the Yankees when Judge was out with an injury. His next 2 years were marred by injuries. They were kind of rough, but this year he was really solid, and he's proven to be unfazed by the playoff pressure, and I think he's going to have a big 2022 with the Yankees. The point of all this is to always expect the unexpected. You never know what the Yankees are going to do. They have financial resources that other teams simply don't have. They can eat contracts. They can maneuver in a lot of different ways. They have some good prospects, so we're going to have a little bit of fun. In the comments, give me your craziest trade proposal for this offseason, and I will read the best ones on next week's episode, and the best trade proposal that I think makes the most sense and gets me the most excited will win an NYY Recaps hoodie. Go ahead and leave those comments below. I'll see you next time.